There are moments in life that seem completely ordinary until something shifts, until something cracks, and suddenly you realize that nothing will ever be the same again. That night started out like any other, quiet and uneventful. But by the time the sun rose, my entire world had changed. It was late, past midnight, and the house was wrapped in silence. My mother was out of town visiting family, leaving just me and my stepfather alone for the weekend. It wasn't unusual, and I had spent most of the evening in my room, half watching a movie, half scrolling through my phone, lost in my own little world. Then, a knock at my door, soft, hesitant, almost unsure. I frowned, sitting up slightly. Yeah? The door creaked open, just enough for me to see the dim glow of the hallway light behind him. My stepfather stood in the doorway, his posture stiff, his expression unreadable. "Are you still awake?" Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. I glanced at the clock on my nightstand. "Yeah, what's wrong?" He hesitated. That alone sent a strange chill through me. I had never seen him like this before, tense, unsettled, like he was wrestling with something he wasn't sure he should say. Finally, he let out a slow breath. "I need to talk to you." I blinked. "Now." He nodded, stepping into the room but not closing the door behind him. A part of me wanted to tell him that whatever it was, it could wait until morning. But another part of me, one that had been quietly observant for years, told me that this wasn't something that could wait. I sat up fully, pulling the blanket around me. "Okay, what is it?" He ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. Then, "I need your help." The words sent a jolt through me. My stepfather wasn't the type of man to ask for help. Ever. He was always the one in control, always the one with the answers. For him to come to me, like this, in the middle of the night, meant that whatever he was about to say, it wasn't going to be small. I swallowed hard. With what? Another hesitation. His fingers flexed at his sides before he finally met my gaze. Something happened, and I don't know what to do. A strange unease settled in my chest. What happened? He inhaled deeply, his jaw clenching. Then, carefully, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He held it out to me, his fingers gripping it a little too tightly, like he wasn't sure he wanted to let go. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. "What is this?" "Just open it." I took it, my fingers trembling slightly as I unfolded the flap and pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. The moment my eyes scanned the first few lines, my breath hitched. It was a letter. A letter addressed to him. But it wasn't from my mother. My throat tightened. Who sent this? His expression darkened. Someone from my past. A cold chill ran down my spine. I lowered my gaze back to the letter, forcing myself to read it despite the unease curling in my stomach. The words were rushed, almost frantic, the ink smudged in places, like whoever had written it had been in a hurry. "You thought you could disappear, but you were wrong. You thought no one would find out, but we did. You have one chance to fix this before it's too late." My blood ran cold. I looked back at him, my hands shaking slightly. What does this mean? His jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. It means that something I thought was buried isn't. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way my stomach was twisting into knots. Who are they? A long pause. Then, people I used to work with. I exhaled sharply. Work with how? His fingers twitched at his sides. The kind of work I don't talk about. My pulse spiked. So you just expected it to go away? He didn't answer. And that, more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. I clenched the letter in my fist, my breath uneven. "So why are you telling me this?" His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something beneath the tension, beneath the quiet panic, something almost like regret. "Because they're coming." The room tilted slightly. "What?" "They found me." His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the undercurrent of something else. Something dangerously close to fear. "And if they know about me, it won't take them long to find out about you and your mother." My skin went ice cold. "What do they want?" His gaze flickered to the letter, then back to me. "That's what I need to figure out. But I can't do it alone. A deep, sharp silence settled between us. I stared at him, my thoughts racing. My stepfather, the man I had grown up trusting, wasn't just keeping secrets. He had been living a life I knew nothing about. A life that was now spilling into mine, whether I wanted it to or not. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. "What are you asking me to do?" His expression darkened. "I'm asking you to help me, before it's too late." The weight of his words crashed over me, suffocating, inescapable. I had a choice. I could walk away, pretend I never saw the letter, let him deal with whatever ghosts had come back to haunt him. Or I could step into his world. A world I didn't understand. A world filled with secrets and shadows and consequences I wasn't prepared for. I took a slow, shaky breath. "And if I say no?" His eyes didn't waver. "Then you should pack a bag and leave. Because if you stay, you're already involved." A sharp, electric fear shot through me. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for any of it. But deep down, I knew. It didn't matter if I was ready. Because whatever was coming, it had already begun. I barely had time to process what my stepfather had just told me before the weight of the situation settled deep into my chest, making it difficult to breathe. My mind raced in circles, trying to piece together the fragments of a life I had never known existed, a past that had been buried for years and was now clawing its way back to the surface with a vengeance. There was no undoing what I had just learned. The letter in my hands wasn't just a warning, it was a promise, a signal that whoever these people were, they weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. I tightened my grip on the paper, my knuckles turning white as I tried to steady my hands. My stepfather's gaze never left me, his face etched with something I had never seen before: fear. Not the kind that came from uncertainty or doubt, but the kind that settled deep into your bones, the kind that came from knowing exactly what was waiting on the other side. I swallowed hard, my voice hoarse when I finally spoke. "What did you do?" The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. For the first time, he looked away, running a hand over his face before letting out a slow breath, like he was about to confess something that had been eating away at him for years. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable weight behind every word. "A long time ago, before I met your mother, before I built this life, I was involved with people I shouldn't have been. I thought I could walk away. I thought I could disappear and leave it all behind, but no one ever really gets to leave. I convinced myself that if I stayed quiet, if I kept my head down, they would forget about me. But they never forget. They wait. They watch. And when the time is right, they come back." My stomach churned, nausea rolling over me in waves. I wanted to believe that this was all a mistake, that he was overreacting, that maybe this letter was just an empty threat, but deep down, I knew better. The way he spoke, the way his voice had dropped to something almost hollow, told me that this wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was real. I forced myself to stay calm, even though my pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What do they want from you?" He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "They want payback. They want me to settle a debt I walked away from years ago. And if I don't, they'll take it out on the people I care about." A cold dread settled in my chest. "Mom." His jaw tightened. "And you." The room seemed to tilt around me, the walls closing in, the air suddenly too thin. I had spent my entire life believing that my stepfather was just an ordinary man, someone who worked, who paid the bills, who existed within the predictable rhythm of everyday life. But now, I was looking at a stranger, someone with a past I couldn't begin to understand, someone who had been living under the shadow of a mistake he had made long before I ever knew him. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind spinning. "So what do we do?" He exhaled, his shoulders tense. "We leave." I blinked. "What?" "They found me, and that means it's only a matter of time before they show up. If we stay, we're sitting ducks. We need to go before they get here." Panic surged through me. "And go where?" "Just pick up and run." He nodded, his eyes dark with determination. "It's the only way to keep you and your mother safe." I shook my head, my stomach twisting into knots. "We can't just disappear. Mom, she doesn't know any of this. She's coming back in 2 days. What do we tell her? He hesitated, his expression grim. We tell her as little as possible. We get her somewhere safe, and then we figure out the rest. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. And if they find us anyway? His eyes met mine, and for the first time since this conversation started, I saw something flicker in his gaze resolve. Then we do whatever it takes to survive. A shudder ran through me. This wasn't just a bad situation. This was something else entirely. Something I had never imagined I would be a part of. And now I had a choice to make. I could pretend that none of this was happening. I could convince myself that it would all go away if I just ignored it, that my stepfather was overreacting, that we weren't really in danger. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Or I could leave behind everything I had ever known. I could walk away from my life, from the illusion of safety I had clung to for so long, and step into the unknown, into a reality where nothing was certain except that the past had finally caught up with us. I looked at my stepfather, at the man who had been a constant in my life for as long as I could remember, the man who had raised me, protected me, and now was asking me to trust him with everything. I took a slow, shaky breath, my pulse still hammering. Okay. His expression didn't change, but I saw the slightest hint of relief flicker in his eyes. He nodded once, as if sealing an unspoken agreement. We leave at dawn. I didn't know what was waiting for us. I didn't know if running would even save us. But one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again.